Mike Kern here with Adam Emmenecker for another shoot around segment. And Adam, welcome to the new season. And it's almost holiday time for everybody. But let's talk about from where we were at this time last year to where we are at this time last year. Last year, the league was 10th in the net as a conference. And surprisingly, with all the replacement parts that we've had from a personnel standpoint, both from a
Yeah.
coaching and player standpoint, we're 10th as a league. And we're playing really well across the conference.
Yeah, I mean, so much uncertainty coming into this year. And Mike, you look at, well, first of all, I think just a testament to the history, the legacy, the strength of the Valley to lose 15 out of the top 16 players from the all-conference team, to replace 5 out of 12 coaches with all that turnover and turmoil, to be in many ways kind of in a very similar position as last year. The league was really, really strong last year, but I think there's been a lot of upside surprise across the valley so far this year. So maybe a couple points, just as I was looking through and doing a little bit of research that highlighted that for me. I think number one, last year, if we look at this time, mid-December, there were 4 teams in the valley in the top 100 in the net. Indiana State and Drake, no surprise to anybody, but 2 of those teams were also Evansville and UIC. So remember, Evansville and UIC played really, really well in the non-conference. So 4 teams in the top 100 last year. This year, there's 3. Drake, Bradley, and you and I. And we just saw a couple big wins for Drake and Bradley just this week. So 3 in the top 100, where you are seeing a little separation this year versus last year. Last year, there were 5 teams in that 100 to 150 range of the net. This year, only 3. So I think that middle of the league has a little bit of room to go to catch up in terms of just the depth of the league. The last thing I'll say, just in terms of style, I think one of the things, we think of the Valley as like a really well coached, great scouting reports, grinded out, willing to win many different ways. But this year, it's been a lot more offense, and it's been a lot more offensive efficiency. 3 teams in the top 12 in the country in three-pointers made per game: Bradley, Illinois State, Indiana State, and Belmont not far behind at 26. I think for all this stuff, no better example than Casey Alexander and the Belmont Bruins basically had to turn over 3 based all conference guys, right? You have Kate Tyson, Malik Dia, Jacoby Gillespie, 3 guys that all could have been in contention for player of the year, all out the door. And now 5 guys averaging double figures: Jonathan Pierre, Carter Witt. That team is just as dangerous as anybody else. Has been down over 10 3 or 4 times this year and come back and won. Casey Alexander, I think, a great indication of the kind of that redemption story of the Valley this year.
Yeah, Belmont's been able to win on the road, which is really hard to do. They're 3-0 on true road games. Um, but let's talk about the teams that have made the most noise, and let's start with Drake. Drake with a big win against Kansas State. They've got 3 power wins. We've had 3 teams in the last 10 years that have had 3 regular season wins against power
Mm.
teams, and Drake is one of those. And the other 2 were Loyola, an NCAA tournament team in 21-22, and Northern Iowa, an NCAA tournament team in 15-16. Drake, let's talk about the Bulldogs who have started out 10-0.
Yeah, I mean, so you start with Ben McCullum, right? And coming in from Division II, and he's a guy that 5-time national coach of the year at the Division II level, 4-time national champion. And he has the pedigree, but bringing in 4 guys from the Division II level and being really the core of this Drake team, a lot of questions, I think, in the preseason in the non-conference, trying to figure out, okay, what is this team? What does it look like? And going to Charleston and getting to win 3 games in 4 days for the Charleston Children's Shriner Classic, beating Miami, so avenging a loss from a few years ago in the NCAA tournament, beating Florida Atlantic, who was in the Final Four themselves a few years ago, and then the culminator against Vanderbilt. That's a really, really good team. I think that put a lot of people on notice. And how about this week going to win against Kansas State? Mitch Muscari, 6 threes in the first half, 8 threes in the game. But the story for this Drake group, it's been their defense, how great they've been, how well coached Ben McCullum's teams are, just that pack line defense, not allowing anything easy for opponents. And it's been Bennett Sturts on the offensive end in his home state in Kansas against the school he grew up rooting for in Kansas State. Not the nation's leader in minutes per game. The guy never comes out, knocks down a cold-blooded 3 in overtime with just under 5 seconds to go to win that game. Bennett Sturts has been amazing as a ball handler, as a defender, as a creator, and making big time shots anytime this Drake team needs it.
Yeah, in contrast, so Bradley returned a lot more experience from last year's team. Drake returned basically one player who played a lot of
Yeah.
minutes last year, Nate Ferguson, but Bradley's also playing very well. They got a big win against San Francisco on Wednesday night. Talk about Duke Dean, who was the preseason player of the year, and his cast that has also returned. They've been playing really well and get a lot of credit also.
Yeah, led the league with 10 guys coming back. I mean, you look across the rosters of the league, and I think the league averaged 9 new guys on every roster, which is just wild. But for Bradley, the continuity you mentioned, Mike, that to have 10 guys back, including a starting five, and one of those was kind of a retread, wasn't on the team last year, but to see Zeke Montgomery come back, I know Brave fans were excited to see him back in the fold. Having that type of roster continuity meant expectations were higher. And no surprise, Brian Wardle's team living up to it. This team is tough minded. They play incredibly well together. They're well coached. I think one of the things you see that's different this year versus in the past. Brian Wardle's teams are usually long, lanky, athletic. They're going to contest you at the rim. They're going to be all over you on the perimeter. They're going to be very physical, but they're going to be defensive oriented. This team is an offensive powerhouse, one of the most efficient offensive teams in the country, the leading 3 point percentage team in the country, at least going into that San Francisco game, and in the top five in makes. So a leader in percentage, in the top five in makes. And a big part of that is Duke Dean, the preseason player of the year, averaging 15 a game now, 5 assists, 3 rebounds. He is a great facilitator of that team, has an ultimate green light, and made a big time shot down the stretch against San Francisco. Duke Dean is that team's creator. He's the closer, very similar in that respect to Bennett Sturts, but I do really think he's the guy that is kind of the head of the snake, basically, for Bradley, creating that great and efficient offense. And I also think that the continued progression that we've seen up and down that roster, being able to have guys like Darius Hannah step out and shoot threes, has really unlocked the offensive prowess for Coach Brian Wardle.
And parting shots, Northern Iowa leads the nation in field goal percentage. Panthers have won their last 4 games, probably by an average of 25 points a game. They've looked really well in doing so. Indiana State starts the conference season with a 2-0 record, and that's another team that has a totally new roster. Matthew Graves was on staff last year, but leading them to a 2-0 start in league play. What else you got?
All the teams you mentioned are great. I think, we saw some early signs for UIC. Illinois State is a team when you can knock down 18 threes like they did against Belmont. That team is incredibly dangerous with what they can do on the offensive end. I'm excited to get into Valley play. Getting some of this conference competition, I expect crowds to go up. The excitement's going. The number of people reaching out to me to talk about Valley basketball has been awesome. Love the excitement around the league, especially with how we started with so much uncertainty.
No, I'm glad you mentioned Ryan Peden's club at Illinois State. Last year, they were 12th from the bottom in three-point field goal percentage. They're in the top 10 nationally in three-point shooting this year, which is obviously is a big turnaround and an emphasis for it, the coaching staff. And they've exceeded what they did last year by far, and that's
Yes,
made a difference in what their win-loss record has been.
without question. Without question.
Well, Adam, thank you very much. Have a great holiday season, and we'll talk to you soon. Appreciate your time.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mike.
All right, thank you.